I'm Mark Moore, and I follow a philosophy. And it's a philosophy that came to me in the wind. I know that sounds really dramatic, but let me explain. One cold winter's afternoon, I was sheltering behind a dry stone wall, up on the moors, above the farm where I was brought up. I was unhappily contemplating my life. I was at a crossroads. I was in a dilemma. On one hand, I felt a deep loyalty to my father, and to the family farm, and to a way of life that I'd been brought up with. And on the other hand, I felt so terribly sorry for the animals that we farmed. I'd come to realise over the years that these animals had all the same emotions as we did. And the way we treated them on the farm didn't seem right to me. And as I was sat there contemplating, I heard a noise drift over the heather. And it sounded like voices being carried over the wind. And as I listened more carefully, I realised it weren't voices at all. It was the screaming of the pigs on a nearby farm. A farm that I knew well. And I knew then that these pigs were being loaded onto the wagons to go to the slaughterhouse. And when I realised that, my heart fell. And at that moment, I knew, right there and right then, that my animal agricultural days were drawing to an end. Because the seeds of philosophy had been planted inside me. It's a philosophy that you feel deep in your core. The vegan philosophy, I suppose you might call it. And if you follow this philosophy, you can't be racist or prejudiced in any way, because the philosophy sees beyond boundary and border. Race, religion, gender, sexuality and species. Yes, the vegan philosophy sees beyond species. And when you follow this philosophy, you've got to confront the unpleasant truth that true humanity, compassion, empathy cannot coexist in a world where 80 billion sentient beings are being imprisoned against their will. And peace is an illusion as long as we continue to exploit sentient beings for our own desires. We cannot justify taking their flesh, their eggs, their milk, just because we like the taste. Our pleasure should never come at the cost of another suffering. And we must also accept that whilst slaughterhouses are in production, we will forever be entangled in cycles of violence and war. The very act of taking a life breeds more conflict. So when as we're all gathered here together, we must strive to overcome this human trait of ours. We must strive to work for a world where compassion reigns. And we must fight tirelessly to create a future where every sentient being is treated with respect and dignity. But you all know that, because you're all activists. You all know it. So what am I doing stood here preaching to the converted? Am I wasting my time? Well, maybe with that little speech I was, because you all knew that. But what I think I can bring to the table today is something that will help motivate you when times get hard, and times will get hard. They've got hard for me since I've been a vocal vegan, a voice for those who can't speak. I've lost a big chunk of my family. I've lost most of my friends. I've lost business contracts, big business contracts, because I became a vocal vegan. Not because I was vegan, but because I was a vocal vegan. Because I spoke out for animals, I lost contracts. And I've had death threats. I've had people sending me letters saying, I know where you live, you better watch what you're doing, threatening family members, and so on. But I have a little mantra that I say to myself every day. I start with this. I'm Mark Moore. I'm a voice for those who cannot speak, and I shall not be silenced. So what motivation can I bring you? Well, a few little tales I could tell you might help motivate you when your times get hard, when you're out there on the streets thinking, am I making a difference? I'm wasting my time. Would it not just be easier just to not eat meat and just like go quiet? Not. Just turn my head and pretend that it's not my job. Because it reaches us all. We all question ourselves from time to time. But we must remember that animal abuse doesn't persist just through systematic acts of cruelty and abuse, but it persists because of our silence, because of the silence of everybody out there, because they all know it's wrong. Deep down, everybody knows abusing an animal in whatever way is wrong. They know it, but they turn their heads and pretend that they don't see it, and they keep quiet, and that's what makes cruelty persist. So, I'd like to tell you a little story about Buttercup. Now, she wasn't really called Buttercup. I've just given her this name. She was just a number at the time. Now, I'd be about 10 years old, and I went into the cubicle housing where we kept the dairy cows on an evening. That's where they slept in the winter months. So I went into the cubicle housing to bring the cows out to be milked. And as I brought the cows out, they all came out apart from Buttercup. She was lying there in the dirt on the bottom, and I knew there was something wrong. So I went up, inspected her, and she had a broken leg. Now you might think, oh well, never mind, we'll get the vet will sort that out. But no, we didn't get the vet, because we knew the vet had come, have a look at Buttercup's leg, and say, she's got a broken leg, know what you can do. You'll have to have a put down or whatever the vet would say. And he sent us a bill for that. And as everybody knows, animal agriculture is a business. We try to save money wherever we can. So we ran a guy who we called the Knacker Man. Now the Knacker Man's a guy who comes, if you've got a dead sheep or a dead animal, he'd come and pick that up and send you a bill for taking it away. But if you had an animal like Buttercup, who was in perfectly good condition, with the exception of a broken leg, he'd take that animal away for free. That's because, as long as that cow's still alive, she could still go for human consumption. So he'd come and he'd take that cow away. So we give him a ring, he came, backed up to the building with his wagon, dropped the tailgate. Now on the back of his wagon he had a winch and a long wire cable. And he took the long wire cable, attached it to Buttercup's good front leg, one of the good front legs, and started winching her towards the wagon. Now I could see, as a young boy, that poor Buttercup was in a lot of pain, heading towards that wagon. But hey-oh, I'd become a bit numb to it. So she approached the tailgate, but when she approached the tailgate, the foot that had the cable fastened to it caught against the tailgate. And my dad went, whoa, 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 stop! But the guy on the winch carried on winching. All of a sudden, I heard a loud crack. And poor Buttercup gave out a deep, low-toned moo of pain. A moo that I'd never heard before from an animal. And he carried on winching her into that wagon. Now she went in the wagon, he threw the door up, and my dad went over and said, that was a bit harsh. Even my dad, and he was an harsh guy. He said, that was a bit harsh, wasn't it? He said, oh, what's it matter? She'll be dead anyway. No, not she, so it'll be dead anyway, soon anyway, so what's it matter? And that was his mentality. It'll be dead soon anyway, was his mentality, because He did that job every day, and he didn't care. Afterwards, I went to my dad and said, that would be cruel, Dad, that seemed really cruel. He said, don't be so flipping soft, or words to that effect. He said, animals don't feel like what we do. They don't have the same feelings as we do. And as a young boy, I'm feeling very embarrassed by my dad's reaction, and he made me feel bad that I questioned it. I believed him. But as the years went by, I began to see animals seem to have the same emotions as we do. I'd seen them feel pain when they were giving birth, or like Buttercup when they were injured. I'd seen the fear on their faces when we were loading them in the wagons to take them to the slaughterhouse or to the auction line. And I'd seen the love of the mother, of the mothers with the babies, the mother sheep with the baby lambs, and the mother cow with the babies. And I'd seen the anxiety and stress, upset of the mother dairy cow when we took the baby away from them shortly after birth. I began to realise that all animals have the same emotions as we do. But the trouble is, in this world, animal abuse often happens out of sight, behind walls, in the shadows somewhere, so we don't see it. And farmers don't speak about it. If you see something horrible happen on a farm, and you're a farmer, you don't go down to your neighbouring farm and say, so-and-so's cow are doing this, and he did that to it, because it happens on all farms. Just don't think it doesn't. They try and romanticise animal agriculture on programmes like things like that. They do, don't they? These little old farmers, they're going, oh, you poor Buttercups upset, and they don't care. They don't care. They're not like that. Animal agriculture is a business. Full stop. It's like if you wanted to get a new tyre for your car, you go to ATS, Quick Fit, or some variant. They supply tyres. Animal agriculture is just the same. Humans want to eat meat, consume dairy products. Animal agriculture is the supplier. They no more love them animals than the garage who sells a tyre loves them tyres. So never be fooled by farmers who say, oh, we love our animals. Would you treat your granny like that? Would you send your children or your mother to the slaughterhouse when they're not performing? When they're getting old? No, you wouldn't. So you don't love your animals. They don't love animals. Always remember that when people say, oh, farmers do care for the animals. They have to, because that's how they make the money. No, they don't. It's profit above compassion. I have another little tale about Daisy. She wasn't really called Daisy. I just made that name up for you guys. She had a number, just like Buttercup had a number. Now one tea time, we were sat having our tea, me and my father, and sisters probably, and we get a phone call. It was Baz from the neighbouring farm. We're having difficulty with a cow calving. Can you come and help us? Of course, we jumped in the car, shot up to the neighbouring farm, and got out. And they had some ropes tied to the calf that was the nose and the calf's feet coming out the back of the mother cow. The mother cow was tied up by a cow tie in a stall by a neck. And they were pulling to try and pull the calf out. She was stuck. And we went to help. So my dad said, well, have you tried a carving jack? I said, yeah, we've tried carving jack. Now, carving jack is something you put to the back of the cow. The ropes are attached to it and you winch it and ratchet it out. You know what I mean? Just ratchet that calf out. Wouldn't move it. So we were trying to pull on the rope. Still wouldn't move it. You were getting a bit worried you were going to lose the cow. You were going to lose the calf. And in that case, you were going to lose a lot of money. So, in desperation, he had the bright idea to bring his tractor across. Pull it with a tractor. Now, I'm not saying it was a massive tractor. It was the exact same tractor as out there, Ethel. It was a little grey Fergie. It was a scraper tractor. It's what he scraped the tubercle housing out with. clean it out. He backed it up, he put the ropes on, and started pulling. Now this dislocated the calf's front legs. The calf came out, but unfortunately the calf was dead. I'm hoping she died before the pain of being pulled with a tractor that dislocated the front legs. I'm hoping that she suffocated or something with the difficulty of birth. But the mother cow was clearly very, very distressed. Now our friends were Baz, and I used to go up there, and I knew the farm. I'd be up there every day with friends. And I know that cow didn't survive either. Baz had a visit from the knacker man as well, and dragged her into that wagon, just like what happened. It's a buttercup. So that's Daisy and Buttercup. Both had awful deaths. But this is just a representation of what happens in animal agriculture. Now also, we used to breed horses as well. My dad used to breed horses. We used to let them run in a bit of a herd. And I'm going to tell you a little tale about John. John was a yearling colt. Now he's one that was bred on the farm, and he was running with the rest of the horses. And one day we watched the horses running about playing, and we noticed John was dragging his back leg. So we brought them in, and like I said, they ran wild, so they were quite wild, so we had to separate them. We had to separate John off from the rest, let the rest out, and John was quite upset, limping about. We could see his back leg was broken. Now I never could understand, and I don't understand yet, why we can't remember a cow or an horse's leg when it's broken. I'm sure we can. I'm sure there's no reason why, if we looked after John, we couldn't have mended his leg. But no, again, it was a quick phone call to the knacker man again. And he turned up. He took one look at John, and instead of attaching a winch to John and dragging him in, he shot him. Now that's a bit strange, isn't it? Why did poor Buttercup and poor Daisy have to be dragged in alive? And John got shot and didn't have the pain of being dragged in. It's still very, very sad that John got shot, but he didn't have to get dragged in. He didn't have to be dragged in with a wire winch and taken off in a wagon to be slaughtered correctly. That's because there was no gain by keeping John alive. No gain at all. He was worth just as much dead as he was alive. So they shot him. But why did they shoot him? Why did they just drag him in anyway? Because they felt some compassion to John. Doesn't seem to make sense to me. Why did John get the compassion? Because animal agriculture puts profit over justice and compassion. Anybody who eats meat is supporting that. Anybody who eats meat is putting convenience, because it's convenient to eat meat and you can eat anything, you can go anywhere and get food easier than you can if you're vegan. Not easier, more conveniently than you can. You have a wider choice, you have more convenience. So people who eat meat and farmers are putting profit and convenience over compassion. They have compassion, because they just showed it with John, didn't they? Some compassion. They shot him first so he didn't have to suffer. But animal agriculture, as I keep saying, and we've got to keep remembering, is a business. It's as simple as that. Unfortunately, it's an outdated, archaic, cruel business that needs to end now. It's no good just saying, well, if we keep not eating meat, then slowly it'll go out. No, we've got to speak. This is why you guys, when you're out there doing your activism, in whatever ways, when you hit them hard times, or when you think, I can't be bothered to go tonight, try and remember Daisy, try and remember Buttercup, and try and remember John. They're all counting on you. All those animals like those are all counting on you to keep going out there and doing what you do. No matter how hard it gets, you've got to keep doing it for their sake. So if you ever hit them hard times, you remember my little stories about those. Now, I'm going to go back to Buttercup with the carving problems. Well, there must be a reason why Buttercup were having trouble carving. And that's because there is a reason. And the reason is the calf was too big for Buttercup. Was she a particularly small cow? No, she was a regular dairy cow. But she wasn't a particularly good dairy cow. So to the farmer, who, in dairy farming, you're constantly trying to improve your dairy herd. You're constantly trying to improve it. And so we use artificial insemination to improve. It'd be easier to have a bull about, wouldn't it? So you can just get the bull out, mate, and job done. But you never improve your dairy herd, because you keep that bull and the dairy herd would never improve. So what farmers, dairy farmers, all farmers really, and beef farmers, they use something called Genus. Genus is a firm that artificially inseminates animals, artificially impregnates them. And they'll give you a magazine full of bulls or males. And you could choose. So if you had a dairy cow that is a really good producer of milk, it produces, 8 gallons a day or whatever they say. Nowadays, I don't know if that's a lot now. 8 gallons a day, but she has bad feed. So she only lasts 4 years or 3 years. 3 lactations, as you might say, of milking. You choose a bull to breed with her, because she's a good cow, which produces a lot of milk, that predominantly gets calves, or young stock, that have good feed. So you breed them two together. So you could choose your bull. That's why you have artificial insemination. So you can tailor what bull you use to your cow to improve your dairy herd, or your beef herd, or whatever. Now, they say now, I don't know if this is 100% true, but I got told not so long ago that you can even choose the gender of your calf now. So you spend a lot of money, a farmer spends a lot of money on the sperm of a good bull, which costs a lot of money. A guy comes and impregnates, and then you get a bull calf. What are you going to do with that? It's no good at all. It's worth nothing. It's worth, or you might have a cow that you don't want to breed with. And you want to inseminate that with a different sort of bull, you'd inseminate that with a beef bull. That's why we have artificial insemination. Now, in the late 80s, early 90s and onwards, it became really popular to impregnate cows that you don't want to breed off to improve your dairy herd. It became really popular to impregnate those cows with the Belgian blue. Has anybody ever seen a Belgian blue bull?
Yes.
They're big, aren't they?
Massive.
They're massive. And the calves are born big. So this was another side to the dairy industry. Another little profit-making bit to the dairy industry is breeding with a beef bull and selling the calf for veal. And if you're impregnated with a Belgian blue, they were worth, you might get £100 for a Chevrolet calf to go for veal. But you get nearly £400, £500 for a Belgian blue. So farmers thought, whoa, quid's in here, because animal agriculture is a business. They're in it for the profit. And so you'd impregnate them with a Belgian blue to get more money. It's money. But unfortunately, that's where the difficulties start. And you can get your cows calved with caesarean section, but it costs a lot of money, so take that profit away, so you don't do it. Farmers don't want to get the vets You don't want to see the vet. You definitely don't want to see the vet on your farm because you get your call-out charge. So, poor old sheep, whose lambs are only worth averagely 80 to 100 quid when you send them in for slaughter, your vet bill's going to be more than that. There's no point getting a vet to a sheep. That's why farmers don't really get vets to sheep unless they like some fancy pedigree breed what they get thousands of pounds per thing. They will do if there's money. So it's a business, and farmers are really good at this business. They've adapted it over hundreds and hundreds of years. And they're very, very good business people. So I know they portray them as simple country folk who go around treating animals nicely. They're not. They're very, very clever businessmen and women who are driven by profit. Like every business that's ever been started, the end goal is profit and making a living. And unfortunately, it's getting worse. You might think, well, you know, with modern times, they don't treat them as bad. But they treat them worse now. Because farmers get less pence per unit, so per animal, per unit, nowadays than they did in the 80s. So they have to keep more. And this is why factory farms come in. So if you looked at oven-ready chicken, you might get £2, you might pay £12.50 or something for an oven-ready chicken. The farmer will get about £2.50 of that per chicken. Out of that £2.50, he's got to buy it in the first place. He's got to feed it, he's got to rear it, he's got to pay wages, he's got to pay electric, he's got to pay for the building, pay for the food, pay for routine antibiotics, although they are banning that now, pay for routine antibiotics for them. All this out of that £2.50. And by law, a broiler chicken or a meat chicken has to have a minimum of 1 square foot of room, which is quite a lot when they're a little chick, but when they grow quickly over that 16 weeks of life that they get, only 16 weeks, they cram together so they can't walk. And that's why you see these broiler chickens who can't walk. So in a building that's maybe 100 feet wide by 300 feet long, there's 30,000 chickens kept in there in conditions that are rife, a brilliant breeding ground for harmful bacteria and harmful diseases. And that's why they feed them antibiotics. That's why we've got problems with antibiotic resistant bacteria and diseases now. And that's why it's affecting the human population. A government House of Commons debate in January 2023 described it as a worldwide crisis. And it suggested that 3,500 people daily was dying from antibiotic-resistant bacteria and diseases. And they said, it suggested also by 2050 it'll be a bigger killer than cancer. So it's a double-edged sword when they start banning antibiotics, routine antibiotics. But that's a different subject. I'm not really here to talk about antibiotics, it's not my field. I'm here to talk about animal cruelty. Now, as I walked around, what made me emotional walking around this amazing place where we are today is the pigs. I was drawn to the pigs. They were so cute and so lovable. I'd never seen pigs that come up for a stroll, ever. The last time I had anything to do with the pigs, I was holding their back legs of a pig whilst my dad had got a razor blade, cut the testicles, popped them out, cut them off and threw them to the pigs to eat. That's how we castrated pigs when we were... No antibiotics, that's the one, none of that. No anaesthetic, quick slit with a razor blade, popped them out, chopped them off, threw them to the pigs and they ate their own testicles. This is everyday occurrences. And the worst thing that I ever saw was when I was a young boy. And they blame a lot of this on gypsies and travellers, and it's not true. I'd be about 8 years old this time. And of course I weren't one for doing as I was told, really. So I got out of the car, didn't I? I was told strictly, if you wait in this car, don't you get out. But I got out of the car, and of course I went snooping around the building because I wanted to know what was going on. It seemed all kind of a bit... So anyway, there was a gap in the asbestos of this big steel frame building. There must have been some cracked asbestos, and it was just about my height to look through. So I looked through, and there were 5 or 6 guys in there, all gathered round a horse. Now then, I watched what they did, and it was very interesting at the start. And they put a rope round the horse's neck, and then they wrapped it round the legs in some way, and the rope came round, and then another rope went round the horse's neck. And there were 3 guys at that side, and 3 guys at this side, all holding this rope, and it kind of wrapped round the neck. And then they pulled, and the horse's head went down, his feet went up, and he went to the floor. And then they did some kind of weird tying with a knot. And at the side, there was a gas bottle burning away with 2 like metals with little handles on. And they went round and into a little point. And they were castrating him. The old, good old-fashioned way, no anaesthetic, again. And what they did, they tied him down. This is a particularly bad one, guys, so get ready for this. They tied him down, and they cut his testicles. And I could see the smoke coming up, and I could see the horse flinch, but he was tied so tightly with these guys holding it that he could not move. He didn't let out a scream, but he was flinching and moving. And I watched. And everything must have been going well, until all of a sudden, all his insides came out. All his insides just came out. And he were there flinching, still flinching away. I could see the panic on the guys who were there. And one of them ran off into the house, and he came out with his gun, 12 bore, and he shot that horse right there, right then. And if anybody had seen that, this is illegal, you know. If anybody had seen that, those guys, with Dad included, would have been banned from keeping animals for life, and they would have gone to prison. But I saw that as a young boy. And they were often at horse sales. You could see the horses that had been gelded that way. There's a difference. Now, after that, my dad had never seen a horse gelded like that. He always got the vet to geld his horses, because he remembered that, and it even touched him. It was a horrible thing to see, and I remember it so well, because of its... Oh, I weren't meant to watch it, and I wish I hadn't. I wish I'd listened to my dad and stayed in that car. But these are things that still happen to this day. I happen to know this still happen to this day. And if any horses come to an auction mart and look like them, someone will say, "Has that been gelded, you know, gypsy way?" And they say, yeah. Well, it ain't a gypsy way. Gypsies wouldn't lower themselves to do that. That's a farmer way. Because farmers don't use vets if they can't help it. They don't want to use vets if they can help it. And that's why I'm not against farmers. I'm against animal agriculture. I'm not against farmers as people. They're trying to feed their family, they're trying to make a living. It's animal agriculture, it's cruel, it's outdated, and people in it become immune to it. That's why they do acts like this. And this is why it's so important what you're doing out there. What you're doing in activism is probably one of the most important things that could be done. Making people aware of it. And this is why I come out here and do these talks. I'm not a public speaker. I'm quite shy, really. I don't like getting up talking in front of people, usually. But I like doing this, because I just hope that it might make a difference. It might stop animal agriculture. Because I agree with the abolishing it completely thing. There's no softly. You can't be softly. Because farmers aren't softly with their animals. They don't like... There's no softly. So you've got to fight fire with fire. You can't be softly out there. So when you're out there talking to people, remember this horse, the horse I've just told you about. I haven't given him a name. But remember him. Remember what I've just told you when you're out there, and it will motivate you to get rid of that softly approach and tell people it's wrong, it's outdated, it's cruel. It should be illegal. Because they're sentient beings and they have all the same emotions as we do. So it's so important what you're doing. It's so important. And also sanctuaries like this are so important. What would we do without sanctuaries like this? What would all those animals out there, and there's a lot, just on this one sanctuary, what would happen to them? They'd all be dead now. They'd all be dead. All those lives saved so they can live a full life, get stroked. Did you look in the little pig house where they're all sleeping in that? Lovely air. That's not farming. That's not what I saw when I was growing up. Sorry. That's not what I saw when I was growing up. And that's not what I still see on farms right now. So it's really important what you're doing. So I'm going to end it there because I've let the emotions get to me. Sorry about that.